accusing government of rebranding the achievements of the Kufuor era as fresh victories. Very strong words, but tonight we go beyond the sound bites. Now joining us is a man who never minces words, a voice that has become synonymous with fiery fiscal scrutiny. Member of Parliament for Bolgatanga Central, Isaac Adongo. He's also chairman of Parliament's Finance Committee. And tonight, if there's anyone who can decode the numbers, the noise, and the national implications, it's him. So what's really inside the budget? Are the concerns of the minority justified, or is this simply political theater dressed in economic jargon? And what does it all mean for your pocket, your business, and Ghana's financial direction? Stay right here. State of Affairs begins now, and tonight's conversation promises clarity, candor, and a touch of controversy. Let's get into it. I am Joshua Kodjo Mensah. So, the Member of Parliament for Bolgatanga Central, also the Chairman of the Finance Committee of the Parliament, Isaac Adongo, is here. Isaac, welcome.
Thank you.
I hope you're doing well.
By the grace of God, I'm doing well.
Absolutely.
Yes.
A couple of months ago, we had you in this same seat, had a conversation about what the outlook looks like. And it's quite interesting that after the reading of the 2026 budget, we're here to have this conversation again. But I hope you're doing well.
Yes, I'm doing very well. We are basically on course. Most of the things that we discussed here have been implemented, and the verdict is out there. Very good progress, and the most important thing about this situation that we find ourselves is that we have restored credibility to Ghana's economic management paradigm. Right. And that is a very important one.
Interesting. Now, talking about the budget, resetting for growth, jobs, and economic transformation, the minority says this is empty. There's nothing new there. What is special about this budget?
Of course, it's not very easy to criticize an inspiring budget. What His Excellency John Dramani Mahama has done with his team within 1 year obviously has dazed his loudest critics, because there's virtually nothing to criticize. When we set out to deliver what we have delivered for 2025, the odds were very stacked against us. We had inherited an economy that had become accustomed to misconduct and misbehavior. We had inherited an economy that was struggling on many fronts to deliver the most important program that we had embarked on, which was to make sure that we get a handle on the IMF program. There were several slippages, and we needed to work within that constraint. This was an economy that had lost so much credibility that the global financial system had rejected us. We had sunk so low to a junk status, and nobody was willing to risk even one cedi on the people of Ghana. Not even Ghanaians were willing to give us money because our capital market was gone. And this was the economy that we had inherited. We had inherited an economy that was suffering massive heightened fiscal, external vulnerability, and above all, had lost budget credibility. And we needed to fix all of this. In fact, the biggest reform in the whole of 2025 was to restore credibility to economic management.
Right.
And that is the driver of all that we are seeing. Let me take you to a few of them. We had inherited an economy that was going through monetary crisis. The monetary policy regime and the kind of management of the central bank was said that we could have no handle on anything at all. Inflation was all over the place. Interest rates were misbehaving. Exchange rates were misbehaving. Why? Because the managers of the economy have sowed the seed of misbehavior. When you decide that you will print 80 billion Ghana cedis and pump into the economy as if you are a Yahoo boy. The end result is that those monies must find somewhere, to make sense. And you had lost credibility in terms of your market. You couldn't borrow. People had those 80 billion Ghana cedis, had nowhere to invest the money. So obviously they found investment in the foreign exchange market. So with all that billions chasing the limited forex resources, don't forget that at that time, the IMF own verdict was that our reserve could only cover 0.8 months of import cover. That is less than 2 weeks. So if you have reserve that could cover only 2 weeks, and you had 80 billion Ghana cedis that you had printed, chasing those 2 weeks of import cover, obviously you know where the exchange rate will be. Right. And it is the reason the exchange rate was around 17 cedis. We needed to bring that back. We needed to ensure that there was some sanity in that market and restore the monetary policy stance so that those monetary variables will begin to behave in accordance with that. Now, I had one of my colleagues, in fact, the former Minister for Finance.
Yes, you're a very good friend.
Yeah, made an argument that, we have intervened with about $1.4 billion, and that, given that amount of money, they would have seen the cedi appreciate about 8 cedis. You were here when he signed the agreement that he was pursuing all his life as a minister. And that agreement was basically to qualify Ghana as a bankrupt nation. Okay? We were to sign an agreement that effectively declares Ghana as bankrupt. And the day he signed that agreement, he came and said that now we should watch the exchange rate. And that some $4 billion was coming into this economy to perform magic with the exchange rate. 4 billion took us to 17 cedis. And you are saying that only 1.4 billion did that. Shouldn't that be worrying to do? In any case, that 1.4 billion he's talking about, I don't know where he's getting that from that he calls intervention. The Gold Board is delivering an average of about 1 billion a month. So how does the Gold Board money work? The Gold Board money is resources generated from Ghana's own gold resources. That obviously is organic generation of economic activity, which ordinarily should go to the banking sector to support the forex, isn't it? So if banks come and they say that, look, I have a number of LCs, I want you to auction for me some forex. And we say, okay, we can auction for you, but you take delivery in a week's time. So we forex sell forex to you to be delivered in 1 week. You give that money to Gold Board. Gold Board buys gold, go and export and get the forex, and surrender the forex to you.
Right.
Is that intervention or mediation? That is intermediation. Are you getting the point? Now, so for anybody...
So you're saying that what we are witnessing is as a result of deliberate
economic policy.
And not simply because...
No.
Like they said, they planted the seeds, you are reaping the fruit.
So if you were exporting, cocoa.
Right.
And 6 months, what you exported was about $500 million. Somebody comes in, simply by introducing sanity and credibility, he's able to garner 1.8 billion in the same 6 months. Where do you want those monies to go? They should be sitting at the Bank of Ghana. Or they should be feeding into the economy to support the needs for forex to import our goods and services. Right. So that is what it is. It is about efficient management of the resources and making sure that the corruption that ate away 1.3 billion in 6 months is brought back to the people of Ghana to support the economy. Okay? Now, there is a forex framework that is operated in Ghana.
Right.
And that forex framework is endorsed even by the World Bank. It says that when you take all your forex inflows, cocoa, gold, whatever you call it, okay, make sure that you have set aside enough to deal with government obligation. Ghana needs to service its debts, which are in foreign currency. We need to pay interest, which is in foreign currency. Okay? We have to make sure that we have set aside money to do that. It says that, look, you have signed IPPs, and the IPPs are paid in dollars. Even though you are generating electricity bills in cedis, you must find the dollars. So set aside enough to pay the energy debt. You set it aside. Whatever you have an arrangement with the IMF that says that you should accumulate a certain amount of reserves. In the case of 2025, it is $840 million as at the end of September. Then as at the end of September, you have accumulated 1.2 billion, far in excess of what you are required. So what is left? What do you do with it? No, I'm asking you, what do you do with it? Don't forget that whatever is left came from the same economy.
Exactly.
So you give it back to the economy. How do you call that intervention? That is financial intermediation. Very simple logic of managing the economy. And these are people who believe in one word, intervention,
right,
and do not understand that when you organically create the resources that generate the forex, it must be able to service the economy.
Because, the argument was that is the IMF intervention and all of that is what we are seeing materialize now. And not necessarily because the NDC had the magic wand.
So as IMF giving Gold Board $1 billion a month, almost $9 billion in the last couple of months is coming from Gold Board.
Yes.
Is Gold Board synonymous with IMF? So the same IMF under you, cocoa, you exported for the same period, you are getting $500 million. Somebody under IMF, the same IMF, is getting 1.8 billion. And you say what? So clearly, our guys have lost it. This is where we were. You were borrowing as if there was no tomorrow. Over the period, you have pumped $60 billion of borrowed money into this economy, and the end result was that your CD was 17 CDs. Another person doesn't borrow this money. He doesn't even have access to borrow that money. He's able to manage the economy to generate domestic internal forest resources, and is able to do something that you are seeing, which is staggering. And then you sit back and say that it is your economic performance. What economic performance? The economic performance where you created such an heightened external vulnerability that we could not service our external debt.
Right.
Let me tell you, one of the reasons why we would declare bankruptcy was that after they printed money at the Bank of Ghana, they realized that they could print cedis, they can't print dollars. And those cedis must be externalized to pay. At that time, we were owing close to $3 billion in debt service. And they needed to externalize dollars, not cedis. They didn't have it. So they were stuck with a lot of Yahoo cedis.
You call that Yahoo cedis?
Exactly. When you print money like you are a Yahoo boy, is that economic management? And you were saddled with 80 billion Ghana cedis.
Right.
That was finding its way into all manner of places. So when we got back, the first thing we did was to bring back monetary policy sustainability. What did we do? We said the 80 billion that you printed is high-powered money that you have pumped into the economy that do not belong to that economy. They must go back where they belong. Okay? So if your country is in trouble, there is a small misunderstanding amongst you, and they are bringing mercenaries from Niger, wouldn't they shoot anybody outside? If you want to stop the war, what do? You return the Nigerians back to where they came from, right?
Right.
So that your country will be safe. So return those Yahoo high-powered cash that you brought into this economy. From where you got it, we don't even know. You went and bought printing machines and put them at the Ministry of Finance to be printing money, and you were printing money as if we were in Accra, New Town, printing papers. That is the kind of economy. So we say 80 billion, go back where you belong, because you are distorting this economy and creating misconduct in our economy. Right. And we need to sanitize that environment. So we sterilize close to 70 billion of that at a very high cost, but very necessary to isolate the noise and the mercenaries from our economy. The end result is that inflation began to behave. So the medium-term target, which they had been operating since 2017, was achieved within 1 year.
Right.
Okay, because inflation returned to behaved patterns of economic management.
Interesting.
Interest rates, as we speak, when you are doing inflation at 8% or 9%, and you want to move into real interest rate territory, it means that you must give an investor a rate above inflation. And if inflation is about 9%, it means that even with 13%, he will accept it. That is why we can borrow at 11.4% on treasury bills. You were doing inflation at some point, even 54%, 23%. So if you want to move to real interest rates for any investor, it must be 23% plus a buffer. So are you surprised that they were doing 33% of treasury bill rates? So that is the sanity that we brought in order to make sure that there was monetary sustainability. The monetary crisis having resolved. That is the first one. The second one was that we had serious fiscal vulnerability. What were we seeing? You were running an economy where your wage bill, your interest rate, your debt service, and statutory funds constituted 115% of your total revenue. In other words, the total revenue that people of Ghana gave you was not even enough to service just 3 items on your budget. Not enough to pay wage compensation, pay interest, and give money to statutory funds like Get Fund, Common Fund, and all of that. To the extent that all those things were in arrears. So how do you now finance goods and services? How do you finance infrastructure development? So this is what we were. And that was because we were increasing the rate of debt accumulation by simply any time we ran a budget. First, we needed to even borrow 15% just to stay within 3 line items, and then borrow to pay goods and services, and borrow to pay for infrastructure. We'll restore that. We'll make sure that our economic paradigm was such that we could anchor our fiscals. And the fiscal anchor was the primary balance. Which is the primary balance? The primary balance says that after you have paid all your expenses apart from debt service, you should be able to leave something to pay your debt service and pay down your stock of debts. So we pay compensation from our own resources, we pay goods and services from our own resources, we pay statutory funds from our own resources, we pay capital expenditure, big push, from our own resources. And in addition, we are left with 1.5% of GDP. And the last time I checked, yesterday I checked, our GDP is 1.5 billion. Take 1.5% of 1.5 billion Ghana cedis. And that is the amount of money that is left for you to pay your debt service, pay some of the debt that they say, we are paying them. And after you have paid that, then your economy is in good standing because you are not adding more to the debt. So that is your fiscal anchor. And that is why today, our rate of debt accumulation has moved into negative territory. What it simply means is that every year we are paying down the debt. We are paying debt service. We leave enough 1.5% to pay down the principal that is left. So now our rate of debt accumulation, which measures the recklessness of adding on to our public debt, which we saw in the past, is now moved into negative territory. We are not adding onto the public debt. That is a sanity that we brought.
So it's about fiscal sanity and then monetary policy sustainability.
Exactly.
These are the anchors that have led to what we see currently.
External sustainability. You see, your external sector is your relationship with the rest of the world. And with the rest of the world, you don't work with the rest of the world with your city. You work with foreign currency, convertible currency. Are you getting the point? So if your external environment is said that you can't find the dollars to pay your debt service, you can't find the dollars to pay your IPPs, you can't find the dollars for your citizens to import very important goods and services, then we say that you have heightened external vulnerability. And that is what we came to meet. Today, our external environment is very strong. Our relationship with the world shows that our trade balance is in positive, close over $1 billion. So after we have imported and we have exported, we have a buffer. Our capital balance is in positive. Our current account balance is in positive. So almost all the things that anchor our external environment is showing external sustainability.
My colleague Emmanuel Ejabin was with a team in Washington, D.C., and he reported similar to what you're telling me now. And so we'll get into that, but let's get into the details of the budget, specifically value-added tax, VAT. What went into the reform that we are seeing with that sector, especially the reduction from 21% to 20%?
So I'll come to that. But I want to walk you through the thinking of the finance minister around this budget and His Excellency the President. Now we have been able to achieve those important variables. We passed reforms to the PPA Act to make sure that there is always the need to obtain commitment authorization. You cannot commit the state to any expenditure that the Minister of Finance has not indicated that he has money to pay for it. So anytime we are procuring, the PPP must ensure that the Minister of Finance has agreed that when you procure this, over the next multiple years, I will have money to pay for it. So that commitment controls is what we did to ensure that we are not adding on to our arrears. We went into an IMF program that said we shouldn't add on to our arrears. And we accumulated 63 billion of additional arrears. We are stopping that, okay, through commitment controls. These are very sustainable reforms that are not loud, but have major impact on making sure that you have a handle on your fiscal, what do you call it, your fiscal anchor. Okay, so we did that. Now, we are saying that having achieved this stability, you will see that there's a three-pronged fiscal objective in this 2026 budget. The fiscal objectives are this, that the stability that we have achieved, we want to consolidate it. We don't want to lose track on inflation. We don't want to lose track on interest rate, exchange rate, and the fiscal anchor. So our fiscal objective is to consolidate the macroeconomic stability that we are seeing. Now, having done that, we now move to the gear of job creating and sustainable growth, where we now begin to say that we must have transformational job creation activities. And there are a number of variables that the budget seeks to achieve that. The first step is that we have realized that over the years, we have not been able to renew our infrastructure. So we brought in the big push to underpin that process of transformation. And so we are developing a number of our roads that are deteriorated and creating new ones so that we can transform the economy and invest appropriately in renewing our infrastructure. Okay, and you can see His Excellency is cutting to almost every region. We are doing some work to improve infrastructure. That is one. The second one is that we have realized that to achieve transformation, true transformation, we must have energy, stable and cheaper energy. So we are investing into our energy future. And that is why you would find that the first step last year was to make sure that we get a handle on the legacy debt that we found in energy. And now we have been able to negotiate that. We are almost toward the tail end, where we are bringing the debt to the IPPs down to about $1.1 billion. And we are saving close to $300 million from that arrangement. And we are also making sure that after we have done that, there are bottlenecks within the chain. You know, Great Coal, we need to retool our transmission lines. We need to have a focus on making sure the ECG becomes more efficient. And you would have noticed that ECG over the last just 6 months has been able to cut down its costs by close to $2 billion. That is what we are doing to make sure that we'll fix the energy sector problem. But we realize that at the end of the day, one of our biggest problems with the energy sector is fuel. Okay? And we have one gas processing plant at Wabo. There's a private one that is operated called the ENI. Now we think that we should be able to scale up the government involvement in building more capacity to have another processing plant. Okay, and we anticipate that the investment that we'll make in that area would give us the capacity to add about 150 million standard cubic feet of gas. That is a game changer for the energy sector. Now, we are also saying that in our conversations with the people that we owe, the IPPs and all of that, we are beginning to see that some of the pricing doesn't make sense. And we think that they should be able to engage in constructive conversation just to maintain their business, but also to make sure the people of Ghana are not shortchanged. In the process, we are aware that there may be some businessmen who may not be interested in this arrangement or they are not interested in the long-term future of Ghana. So we want to make sure that we are ready. Just in case it has to get to a point where we lose a shortfall, we have about 1.2 million megawatts and 1,200 megawatts of power to fill the gap. And that is going to be a state-sponsored activity. As we speak now, VRA alone is anticipating something in the region of 1,800, but we have scaled it down to 1,200 megawatts of power. And that is the work we are doing to make sure that we secure the energy future of our country. We are expanding energy to those underserved communities. And you would have heard it, that the Minister of Energy and Green Transition is focused on making sure that the rural electrification project that is denying a lot of our people access to energy is brought back on stream. 9 years we abandoned it. Now we want to come back and we are working on it. So these are the interventions that we are making. We want to improve the mix of energy. So you will find that we have actually negotiated some of the solar power that IPPs that we inherited, where we're doing close to $12 per megawatt. We have been able to negotiate down to about $6.
Right.
That's almost half. And we do believe that if you look at the international market, there is a possibility that in future we could bring it down further. But the essence is for government itself to create the enabling environment and the capacity for Ghana to be self-sustaining in energy and renewable energy activity. Right. So that is that's the part of the transformation. Then we are spending on social, we are improving social spending and security. So for instance, before education, GHOne, we were giving GHOne about 3.4 billion a year. And GHOne was spending 1.2 billion of that money to service the debt that they procure, which they call the Dutch bonds. So GHOne was left with just about 2.4 billion to do the infrastructure in our educational institutions. Now we are giving them 9.9 billion. Doesn't that look like a rocket just landing at GHOne administrator? 9.9 from about 2.4 billion. And the government of Ghana has decided to absorb the Dutch bond as a government of Ghana debt.
Isn't that putting pressure on the administration itself? Because we've seen and heard of all these things, and some are of the view that, yes, on paper they look good, but then we've had a situation where we've had these allocations made, and then disbursement becomes a problem, and we are not able to give what we said we'll give to specific sectors.
So as we speak now, GHOne, there are no arrears. The government is paying them. Okay? As we speak now, GHOne has given me approval to build a brand new secondary school in one of my rural communities because they got more resources. Don't forget that we have 5,000 schools under trees. We need to eliminate that. Okay? If you look at the free SHS, schools that, were admitting, a certain number, say 5,000. Today you go there, they are 10,000. Using the same infrastructure. Clearly, that is not conducive.
Wasn't the allocation because of the no fee stress policy introduced by the administration?
No.
Where GHOne had to make sure that it made available money to these students?
That amount of money was less than 400 million Ghana cedis. And we are talking about education sector that has a deficit of 1 million furniture. For our kids who are lying on their stomach, we need to procure 1 million furniture this year alone. In order that our children get some conducive environment to learn. We have brothers and sisters who are disadvantaged, learners with disability. We have to make that education free for them. When the GHOne formula comes, you will find that there's an allocation to deal with that. Okay, the special schools, we are providing enough resources to make sure that they are given free access to education. So the education sector is a key social spending that we need to support the poor and the vulnerable.
And we will see the disbursement.
You will see the disbursement.
And not just on paper, but making sure that the money gets to the people it needs to get to.
There is no arrears, at least for the 2025 budget. And unless you want to tell me that we have stopped understanding what we're doing in 2025, and that when we come to 2026, we'll shift the focus. No, we will do that. Social spending. National health insurance, another important part of social spending is health. The Mahama Cares, fully funded by close to 3 billion Ghana cedis to ensure that we get a handle on non-communicable diseases. The GHOne, the National Health Insurance and the Ministry of Health, together with the Ghana Health Service, will embark on retooling of our diagnostic systems in our country.
Right.
Most MRIs are out of order. You go to a hospital and you need some diagnostic services for a doctor to prescribe, they are not working. And this has been like that for almost 8 years that we left power. They were not retooled. We want to address that so that we don't die in our hospital. We'll go to hospital to get health care. We don't go to hospitals to die.
Right.
Are you getting it? So that is a major part of social spending. Security. You would have heard that we are bringing a lot of fire tenders.
Hold on to that for me, because under security there's also quite a number of things I would like to explore. But then my guest tonight is Isaac Adongo. He is the chairman of the Finance Committee of Parliament, helping us to unpack the 2026 budget. But then, if you've not heard, then let me tell you, there's some latest news from MTN. And for those of you who love MTN Free After One, prepare for the upgraded experience that is MTN Free After One Extra. Now, let me tell you what the extra is all about. With MTN Free After One Extra, you can talk for 1 whole hour uninterrupted while paying for only the first minute of every 10 minutes you talk, which means that for every 10 minutes you talk within the hour, you only pay for the first minute, and you also get to talk for 60 minutes straight with no interruptions. You like what you hear, right? Well, as if that's not enough, you also get 50 megabytes of data for free after your first call daily. So now's the time to talk extra with all the people you love, and to subscribe to MTN Free After One Extra, just dial *550#, which is *550#, and follow the prompts. We'll be back after this break and explore the investment or what the government seeks to spend security-wise. so he understands the money and economics. Somewhere a couple of years ago, he gave lectures and he was dubbed Adongonomics because he was putting things into proper perspective. But before we went on the break, you were even touching on the government allocation for security.
Yes.
You mentioned that education is key, health is key. You're also making some investments in security.
And a major part of social spending is the frontline Ghanaian vulnerable communities.
Right.
So we are making resources available to improve the LEAP program. We are giving first-line support to improve the capitation grants for children in rural communities. We want to improve the delivery of school feeding so that the quality and quantity is better. So these are all social services that are underpinning the work, because we do know that as part of social protection, it is not easy for everybody to equally join in delivering and providing the economic transformation that we are seeing. Others must be brought up to be able to join that activity.
Right.
So you find that if you want to support agriculture, so whilst you are doing commercial agriculture, you must handhold the peasant farmers, because that is a livelihood program. So you find that there's a lot of emphasis on commercial agriculture, but also to make sure that our peasant farmers are not left behind. So the Akoko Kitinkiti program is a social program to make sure that the rural communities are able to see economic activity and be able to contribute their quota towards the development of our country. And like I was talking about security, you would have found that we are trying to retool the Ghana Police Service. For so many years, the Ghana Police Service, yes, there was some work done, but we think that the capacity that the police need for internal security must be enhanced. And there's a lot in this budget to do that. We also see that the safety net, particularly when you come to firefighting and fire security, we have a problem with fire tenders.
And then, last week I spoke to the PRO. He mentioned that their tenders are obsolete.
So we want to retool that. And the Minister for Interior, Honorable Muntaka Mubarak, will be giving resources to retool the fire service. There is also the policy thinking, to try and leverage with the private sector to provide capacity to fight fire in some of our high-rise buildings that are coming up. Because if you have a high-rise building like the Bank of Ghana Square, with fire at the 18th floor, you must have firefighting capacity beyond the fire tenders. So all that is being considered. And so we think that security is key. You would have also found that there are a lot of provisions in the budget to deal with the army and to retool the army and make sure that...
Your colleague in Parliament, the ranking member on the Defence Committee, he says you are rather prioritizing luxury travels when it comes to retooling the Ghana Armed Forces, instead of getting them the jets that they really, really need to fight, among others.
Honorable ABF Husseini said, they are giving you a baba. Wait, let them finish and look in the mirror. You are touching and say, no, here, you haven't cut here, you haven't cut it. Wait. Like you said about Paul Boateng about execution.
Yes.
When it comes to implementation of the budget, those matters will come up. Okay? And some of those will be brought to Parliament. And he will be one of the strongest voices to fight against it. Marketo, when it comes, and he's now fighting it, play the voice. Being in opposition doesn't mean that you should oppose everything. So you can see that we are taking social spending very important. We are dealing with economic transformation. You can see agriculture, where we are mechanizing agriculture. So the agriculture services centers and all the implement and equipment that they need to modernize agriculture is in this budget. And you would have found also that industrialization is a key part of this budget, that we want to move towards adding value to our raw materials.
Right.
Okay. And about 7 new factories are targeted to improve agribusiness. And then also we want to move in not just to find the next cocoa, but also to make sure that that next cocoa doesn't suffer the same fate as cocoa by its process. So the palm oil plantations and the accompanying integration into the forward march to add value. Right. It's all in this budget. Right. So this is a very comprehensive...
But the key point here with regards to industrialization, or the key message out there, has been the 24-hour economy. And there's been comments from the minority and others that, listen, in the 2025 budget, we made allocation for the 24-hour economy. What did we see?
our colleagues, I think their understanding of economic management, and I'm not surprised where we got to, because they simply don't understand that.
They don't understand economics?
There are things to do with preparatory work.
Right.
You remember that they made a press conference and said that we budgeted for 13.8 billion for big push, but we ended up committing 63 billion. Okay? You are running a $10 billion program over 4 years. That is about 100 billion at a minimum for 4 years. Okay? So what do? You have to make sure that you are able to do most of the preparatory work and get projects on your books to start aggressive implementation. So when we brought the budget for 2025, we spelled out the multi-year commitment that we wanted Parliament to approve. So we indicated how much we want to spend in 2026, 2027, 2028. And those multi-year commitments were approved by Parliament. Now, if you want to wait this year, you will now have to go and do survey of roads that you want to construct. Do inventory of all the roads. How many bridges are you going to construct? Where do you have to increase the excavation? What material are you going to use to fill those excavations? Are they going to boulders or laterite? Before you start, 6 months is gone. So you can't put 30 billion on the ground when you start in the same year. So what you do is that you do the preparatory work in the previous year. So in the previous year, we have done the preparatory work. We have had contracts signed and committed to 63 billion. We say that the actual implementation of that in 2026 should be projects on the ground delivered to the tune of 30 billion Ghana cedis. You can't start 30 billion and complete 30 billion in 1 year unless you crash the program. And when you crash it, what you are simply is that you need to throw more resources at it, and that becomes very expensive. So now we have 63 billion on our books for contracts. So from 1st January, you are delivering 30 billion in that year. Okay? Right. So you have a fair chance that even if you can do 50% of what you have planned and contracted, that should give you 30 billion. The following year, if you can do the other 50%, that should give you 60 billion. You still have 40 billion, which means that this 2026, as you are implementing and putting 30 billion on the ground, you are doing preparatory work to make sure that you are able to do the additional 40 billion in the last 2 years. So project selection will happen, inventory of projects will happen, developing designs will happen, preparing bill of quantities will happen, going to the market to contract and get service provided on contracted will happen, so that you are ready to scale up the implementation. So if you see 63 billion, we were committed, we were given the approval to commit more than 13.7 billion. Go and look at the budget. There is a multi-year budget for the big push. Because we knew that to be able to do the volume of work, the 100 billion, in just 4 months, a lot of work must be done in the first year of preparation.
Right.
So, for instance, they said that we produce only 51 million for Women Development Bank. Yes. How can 51 million build Women Development Bank?
And in this budget, we've seen 400 million.
When the minimum capital for a bank is 400.
Yes.
That 51 million is to help develop a program, do feasibility, okay, do the design of what the bank should look like. What type of risk management tools are we going to put together? What type of a bank do we need? Then this year, you will now move to the stage of implementing actual licensing of a bank.
Which is the capitalizing with 400 million.
Which is the 400. But these guys do not understand that.
But even with that,
yes,
Adongo,
yes,
the question is,
yes,
have we really learned our lesson when it comes to government taking these initiatives? Because a lot of examples have been cited, from ADB to others, and whether or not this is the way we want to go.
This is a government that has shown true faith. NIB. I was at the forefront of fighting for the survival of NIB. In fact, towards the last 2 months of that government, NIB was almost gone. I had to do a press conference, and I started speaking from their boardroom. You remember when I got angry and said that a certain managing director was managing the bank on Zoom? I was speaking from the boardroom. It saved the bank. When we came, okay, the finance minister was part of us that were working to save the bank. So immediately he recapitalized the bank. And NIB today is one of the most profitable and most capitalized banks in Ghana, but it was almost gone. There is a commitment from the finance minister to recapitalize ADB. In fact, do you know that even Prudential Bank, as we speak, is owned by the government through the Ghana Amalgamated Trust? Government now owns 74%. There's a commitment to recapitalize that bank. So if there's any group of people who are committed to financial soundness and ensure that the financial sector is stable, it is the NDC. So when we tell you we will set up a bank, you doubt us? You doubt us with all this track record? Even the consolidated bank, they amalgamated all the problems in the banking sector and failed to recapitalize. We are recapitalizing it.
CBG.
So CBG. So we have the track record and the moral fortitude to tell you that we'll set up a bank that is a working bank, and you must believe it. And that is why we didn't put 400 million in the 2025 budget, because we knew that if you really want to set up a workable bank, you cannot do it in 1 year. So we put the preparatory budget in that 2025, and they went to market because they don't understand how these things work. They expected us to put, so 24-hour economy, a lot of preparatory work has been done.
Right.
The policy has been now completely outlined. We are very clear what we want to do. We are very clear. So some of the interventions to invest in our energy future is driven by the enabling requirements of the 24-hour economy.
Okay.
To make sure that there's enough energy so that people who invest in the 24-hour economy will not be saddled with energy problems. The construction of Big Push is tailored towards that. For those of you who know Ghana very well, if I give you the map of what we are seeking to do with Big Push, you would wish that the future comes sooner than later. You will have heard that we want to do the Kumasi Expressway,
yes,
the first of its kind. But the Kumasi Expressway opens the way to the north. And we have in the north what we call the Northern Ringway. If you pass through Kumasi, you get to Techiman. You know you can go through Wenchi, and you end up in the savannah. Through the savannah, you pass through Sola, you link up to Wa. Very terrible road network from Sola to Wa. From Wa, you go through Hen, Tumu, China, Navrongo, and back to Bolga. From Bolga, you can go through Nakpanduri in Boku, through the Bolga Boku Promakun Road. It is the vision that His Excellency had to make sure that that ringway gives various options for people who want to travel. So if you pass through Nakpanduri, you end up in Nalego. Takes you back to Gambaga, Pasempe, and then you are back in Walwale, Dr. Mahmoud Baobion's hometown. And you can choose to go back to Tamale and to continue your journey back to Accra. The Eastern Corridor Road that we're doing, people didn't understand. If you start from Accra, you go through Akosombo. You go and appear at, Have.
Have, yeah.
Yeah, at Have, you can branch to the left, and it takes you all the way to Kwando. Okay? From Kwando, you end up in Uraura, and then you are in Ketikrachi. You cross the river with a pontoon. And in fact, we want to link that space. We want to construct the longest bridge so that people can cross over to Kwandai. Okay? Then from Kwandai, you can go to Yendi. Then from Yendi, you are in Tamale.
So it's a holistic program.
It's a holistic program. You see, for those who don't want to pass there, you can pass through Hohoi, go through Kwanta to Kwasa, and you are at Otidamanko, Bimbila, Yendi, back to Tamale. And those of you who want to go in the Western Corridor, you see what is happening on that stretch. Okay? So you can go through, Kaswa. From Kaswa, you end up on the Cape Coast Road. Before you enter Cape Coast, if you want to go back to Kumasi, you can use Yamransa Junction. Pass through Fomena. Not Fomena, Fosu. From Fosu, you are going back to Kumasi, or you can decide to go left and go to Obuasi.
Right.
Okay? And through Obuasi, you can come back to Kumasi. Or you can go to Takoradi. From Takoradi, you take your left, you are heading towards Asankregwa, Enchi. You end up in Jaboso. It takes you back to Sefibi also, through Bebieni back to Kumasi. This is the road network we are trying to improve. And this is a holistic program. You don't do yearly allotments and achieve this kind of massive transformation.
Right.
You need to have a long-term view. Whilst you are acting short, you have a long-term view. And so in 2025, when we're approving for Big Push, we told the people of Ghana that Big Push, we will need an amount of money of so much for 2026, 2027, 2028. And we decided to front-load the preparatory work so that when we start, we are going. And somebody doesn't understand